Welcome, everybody, to Space Force. I am your host, Jason Tondro.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Aid. Hello.
And we are here for Unification 3, the 7th episode of Star Trek Discovery. And the ship goes to Vulcan, but it's not called Vulcan anymore. Now it's Navarre, and we'll talk about that. And Burnham has evidence that suggests that the burn started in a particular place and went outwards, that it was not like a universal galactic simultaneous event. And we find out that the Vulcans think they caused it. They think that pressure from the Federation forced them into doing this scientific research project, which was dangerous, and they believe that this research project caused the burn. And so they've quit the Federation and they've isolated themselves. And the Romulans are there. Like, the Romulans and the Vulcans have formed a united society, and we go to the Vulcan planet, and it's all really exciting. I thought it was pretty cool. And Burnham immediately enters into this like duel of wits contest with the Vulcans, in which, in classic alien society fashion, and we'll get to some of this in the outline, except that instead of fighting you to the death in an alien battle over honor, it's a Vulcan battle over honor. So it's all about argument. And Burnham's mom shows up, and she's a member of the Coat Milat, and there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on. And eventually the debate ends in a sort of classic Solomon's Choice moment, where the person you can tell the person that values the contest the most, because that's the person that gives up. The person that says, no, I give up, I yield, you win, is the person that really deserves to win. And so we get the evidence, that the data that she was looking for to prove that the burn had a central source location. And all this time has been about Burnham's debate over whether or not she belongs in Starfleet. So by the end of the episode, she has resolved to stay in Starfleet, to not leave, that this is her place and it's where she belongs. And that more or less, it feels like it wraps up, or it's trying to, Burnham's big dilemma of the first 6 episodes. Well, Aid, what did you think?
Not a lot happened, did it?
Not a lot happened? It seemed like a lot happened to me.
Yeah, but not a lot. There was a lot of chatting. There was a lot of talking. There was a lot of doing and throwing, but actual stuff that actually happened. Not a lot. Quite disappointed the fact that, again, we go to another planet. We go to Vulcan, and we end up being in a room.
Yeah, with like
which is kind of crappy. I'm glad that they used Leonard Nimoy as the Spock flashback rather than aging up the other actor from Discovery, so that was nice. All in all, again, it suffered again, in my opinion, because it's the Burnham show again. Right. The idea that everything happened around Burnham just makes it so coincidental is getting to be ridiculous. So, you know, we furthered the plot along a little bit. It did blow one of my theories out the water, which was the idea that it was Burnham's mum traveling through time that caused the burn. Now, obviously, she arrived on Romulus or wherever she arrived in a lot later than that, so that's screwed over. So there's still some potential time travel shenanigans to go on, but her actual arrival did not actually cause it. But her being a Romulan secret society that apparently just lets anybody in is even crazier than having the kid in it from Picard, because it's an all female society except for that guy. It's like it's an all Romulan society except for that person over there. It's just weird. But yeah,
Jim.
So last week I said I wasn't going to review these episodes.
And how long is that vow going to last?
I'm going to hold on to it. I enjoyed the episode on the basis that whereas Aid seems to have points that the plot didn't advance, I don't like the plot.
That's true.
And I love the characters. So I was able to enjoy the fact that the characters were struggling. Like we haven't even mentioned, like Tilly is B-plot.
Yeah.
And we have to navigate those waters. So I quite enjoyed the episode. I think it's the strongest episode we've had of this new season.
Okay. And
I think it's the most emotionally intelligent episode that Discovery has given us, which is ironic that it's Vulcans that allows us to have an emotional epiphany about Burnham.
Well, we'll unpack that then as we go. Let's start with some of those B plots, maybe. Last week on this show, I wanted two things. I wanted First Officer Tilly, and I wanted absolute candor. And they gave me both. I was a two-handed happy camper for this episode.
They give me both for like the first 15 minutes.
I know.
I texted you while I was watching the episode. You're gonna love this.
And you were not wrong, my brother. But I can. That said, I can see the writing on the wall with Tilly, like because it's that acting first officer, right? I want you as my acting first officer. Well, obviously, what's going to happen is that eventually Burnham will get her shit together, and she'll do something that Saru decides makes her first officer again, and Tilly will go back and be promoted to lieutenant, and everybody will call it a victory, and it'll be a wash.
I don't understand why she couldn't be promoted to lieutenant there and then.
Well, they didn't do it.
I don't understand why they wouldn't have done that. Why would you not do that? That makes perfect sense. But the other thing about that is when they're going about the Tilly thing. Oh, Tilly. Oh, okay. Oh, you've travelled 900 years into the future. That clarifies you for your position. Do great. So is everybody else on the ship. Everyone else on the ship has literally done exactly that. So she's done nothing special in that regards. So now give me another reason why she's special. You know. But yeah, I think as soon as they announced that she was like going to be in the running, it was a foregone conclusion. It was going to happen. She was going to take it. But I was just disappointed that they didn't promote her at the same time. I think they're at staff at headquarters. They could have done it if they wanted something official. Surely the captain must be able to do it.
They're saving the promotion for when she's demoted from first officer.
Right. That might be true.
Jim,
I actually think you're wrong.
Okay.
So what I think what it is Saru is a very tentative captain.
Yeah.
He doesn't make bold, sweeping steps.
That's right.
He makes very quiet motions. Like that's I think the problem I'm having with Saru, because we've never had a very passive character in the lead role.
Yeah.
And he kind of has to be that. Like we look at it from the narrative construction, because we're so focused on narrative, that if this is the Burnham show, someone's got to be a passive actor, and that's Saru, which is weird to us. So I think he tentatively gave her the acting number one position.
Yeah.
Not to make waves with the rest of the crew, but also because Tilly's story is about believing in herself. Okay. Tilly has an abusive mother who has done everything to belittle her and her accomplishments. She's constantly fighting with that voice. She's constantly fighting with her own self-critical narrative of whether or not she belongs among all these brilliant people.
Sure.
And I think she has to prove that to herself before she can fully take on the role of being number one. So I think it's acting. She'll still get the promotion. That's where the story is going to end. But when the promotion comes, she's going to become the permanent number one, because her story is still about being the best captain in all of Starfleet.
So you feel like Saru made her acting captain because she's not ready to be.
She's not ready for the full responsibility. And if she was given the full responsibility without that out caveat, she may have refused.
Well, you might be right. That sounds reasonable in character for all those people. I was also struck by Saru in this episode. We didn't talk about it yet, but there's this whole B-C plot going on. As Aid has noted, there's a lot of B plots in Discovery, right? Like there's always like B, C, D, E plots all running along at the same time. And one of those, this episode, was Saru and the Vulcan president, who are on this sort of tour of discovery. And it really showed off Saru's strong suit. Like Saru is he's not my favorite captain because he's reluctant to act and he's way too quick to play the martyr. And I don't like that. Now, I'm not saying it's not in character. It makes perfect sense for Saru's background and species, psychology, and all that stuff. I get it. But he's kind of a crappy captain. But when he has 8 hours to schmooze a Vulcan president, he's great. Like, he's really good. And he's patient, and he's very calm and very very, very gentle. And he's talking to somebody who respects logic, so his own logic is appreciated. And like Saru would be a rising star in the diplomatic corps, and that guy belongs out of the captain's chair and somewhere in the diplomatic corps. But then we wouldn't have a show, I guess.
Was I the only one who was like, you know what? I hope Saru gets his pawn fall on eventually.
Yeah. Hey, what did you think of the whole of any of this stuff?
I actually quite like the Vulcan president. I thought she was an interesting character.
Me too.
She felt like a Vulcan. She was, again, we don't know exactly how the teachings of Vulcan have altered since the Romulans have been integrated. So the idea that they've obviously adopted something on there. Maybe these Vulcans aren't quite the logical lot because they've obviously got more Romulan influences. Yeah. And I do mention about obviously the teachings of Spock, but again, even the teachings of Spock have got to go back a few hundred years. Yeah. It's not something that literally died, like he died, 10 months ago in Discovery time. So
she never said like that would be illogical or to do that would be illogical.
Exactly.
All those classic Vulcan kind of lines she didn't have.
Yeah, and even during the debate as well, that's very similar. They use a lot of to and fro in, but they don't throw those lines out. Yeah. They don't go to stereotypical Vulcan language. But she, again, she's a good character. She was interesting. She was. It'd be a waste to not see her again in something else. And if this is another kind of stepping stone bridge to actually bring the Vulcan or Navarre or Navarre, isn't it? Not Navarre, Navarre under Federation, rule again or cooperation. It should be good for her to come back. But again, we've already seen a lot of characters that, hey, this character's really cool. When they're coming back, they've gone.
They did plant the idea that they would come back here a couple of times, right? Saru says, she says to Saru, I would like to continue our conversation in time. Like we might talk again, but not soon. And then of course Burnham's mom is like, you always know where to find me, right? So we have a couple of them. So let's talk about the debate because the action of this scene. There's an old trope in sci-fi, and it's tired and worn, where someone's on trial. It's a courtroom scene, and to get out of the trial, they invoke an ancient custom of the planet to engage in trial by combat. And we put it in games because it's a great way to get a fighting scene out of it. And when she invoked her ritual debate combat, I could not help but laugh because it's a totally Vulcan version of this very worn sci-fi trope. But it becomes the main structure of the episode. Like it's really all about the sort of trial. This is a trial episode, and there's a long history of those in Star Trek. What did you guys think of how that all broke down? Maybe this is Jim. Is this touching on your point about emotional intelligence?
My criticism in the last episode, the Burnham goes 100% rogue episode.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, she gets exactly what she wants. Like she's better off having broken the rules than she was adhering to them in every respect. Like it goes 100% the way she would want it, even getting the demotion, because it's like she doesn't necessarily wanted the job in the first place.
Yeah.
We only saw her in the captain's chair once in that brief 3-episode tenure, and it didn't seem to interest her. Now, in terms of this episode, this is where it becomes emotionally intelligent, is because it finally interrogates Burnham as a character. We've been saying all season long, Burnham's one character trait is she's always right.
Yeah.
And now they've decided that need, that pathological need of hers, established in the second season and going back to the pilot when she, when they call her out in this episode for attacking her captain and trying to stop a battle because she thought she knew best.
Yeah.
They've now interrogated that as her fear of losing everything. Because that's the thing that we sort of overgloss with Burnham's character, is that she's someone who, lost her parents to the Klingons, then found a new home with the Vulcans and had that home blown up by Vulcan logic extremists. That's where the Sarek mind meld thing happens, and she winds up having him in his, his cadre in her brain for a while. So she's someone who's constantly experiencing these episodes of traumatic loss, and every time she blames herself. Like, yes, it's a childish need. Spock calls her on it in the second season because she wanted to stay and watch the supernova, or because, her presence is what prompted the Vulcan extremists to target that facility.
Yeah.
And now it's she has to be right all the time, because if she's not right, something can go horribly wrong.
Okay.
And this episode, the dressing down happens by her mother.
Yeah.
In front of everyone. Like, it's in a quiet room where the admiral can talk you down and be like, you stepped over a line, but you leave that room and everyone in there, no one's going to talk about it. Like, this is a public hearing in front of everyone, and Burnham's sins, whole character flaw is laid bare to the point where she does the Solomon, and she realizes, okay, I'll just get this data some other way. Like she actually does the needs of the many, in this case, Naval, the needs of Spock's dream made manifest. She goes, that outweighs my need to fix the bone. And I think that's the very first time she actually lets go of a personal goal in order to be like, you know what? I found it this time. I can find it some other way.
Yeah. Abe, thoughts?
I liked, as I said before, the three actual people putting the counter argument. I think they were interesting characters. Yeah. I like the idea they had Romulans and Vulcans on the same council.
Yeah.
They didn't fall back into the, hey, well, I'm a Romulan, so I take everything you say, Mr. Vulcan man.
Yeah.
They actually do agree on something, which is really nice as well. So there's kind of like, well, you're being almost too logical. Can you not see this is actually the way to go? Well, no, I'm going to stand my ground. They were good. But say my biggest problem more than anything else is just having her mum there. I just think the idea of her mum just being, I happen to be the happy Romulan. It's like, why did you do that? Why? I mean, I know it's nice to bring her back, but the idea that she was just happened to be the one. Right. There's a lot of stuff. This episode, there's so many niggly, narky bits in this stuff that just annoy me so much. The actual, when you fundamentally come down to it, that actual discussion between the two is not so bad. Again, I'm not particularly enamored with Burnham. Yeah. So the idea of having her being the central character and having all this revelations kind of stuff, it's like, we kind of already knew that, but obviously the character didn't. But right. I don't care. There's other characters out there that actually could be potentially more interested than you. And if this was DS9, this would be a different character. And this is the problem. I think everything falling, like Jim said, everything falling the right way for her. It's nice to see something go wrong, but then it also falls the right way for her at the end of the day. So it's okay. So right. So it doesn't. You don't even get like, okay, we'll come back later. She still does what needs to be done.
Well, because that's the wisdom of Solomon, right? Like this episode is so clearly based on that biblical story where, how are we going to solve the problem? We're going to cut the baby in half and nobody wins. Because they literally have two pieces of data, right? They've got Burnham's data and they've got the Vulcan data, and we can only solve the problem if we bring the data together. And finally she's like, no, okay, You can have it. You can have it, and I won't take it. And yeah,
I think what the scene is missing, like if I was going back and I was reshooting this, we see a whole bunch of Starfleet officers in the room.
Yeah.
But none of the Starfleet officers are people we've seen before. Like if we had a reaction shot to when they bring up the binary stars, not to Saru because he was there, but to Detmer, who initially gave her the cold shoulder when she showed up on the Discovery, when Loka picks her up. Like if she had an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And this was a thing that I brought up to my wife when we were watching The Crown this weekend.
Oh yeah.
And the thing I love about The Crown is those quiet reaction shots. Like people have time to process or prepare for an event. Like, and they're not long. They're like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And sometimes it's just, one character sitting in the room going, fuck. Because it didn't go the way they wanted. And this show never has that.
Yeah. The Crown.
If she was laid bare in front of the people that we know as an audience, it would matter more in terms of her admitting her failing.
The Crown is a slower, quieter show, and it gives the storyline and the characters moments to breathe that Discovery does not. Aid, by the way, I totally agree with you that I like all the other characters on this show better than Burnham.
It's not that I don't like. It's not that I don't like her. It's just in the rankings of characters, she's not the one I would pick to be the star.
Right.
So it's again, I would just liked it to have been a rotating crew thing. This is a Detmer episode. This is a U episode. That would be the best way to do it. But they decided to go for 1 star, job done. And everyone again, we've seen other characters again that we go, what was your name again? What did you do? It's like, oh, okay, whatever. And again, the funny thing of like Tilly is one of the few characters that actually has a name. So her becoming first officer is hardly a surprise because she's only one of the 3 people who actually know what she's called. So
right. But I want to say that when Burnham sees Spock's face in that flashback, I know, like I teared up. She did such a great job selling that moment to us, seeing her younger brother now old, and such an idealist from the man she knew when she was younger. It was really affecting. Like I really loved that moment. Jim, you said there's some discussions about the Vulcan hologram here.
Oh my god! So I'm part of Trek Twitter, and like any fandom, it can have its ups and downs. Yeah. And one of the pedantic, and I know we all argue pedantic technological bullshit on this show. I've been guilty of it, with the caveat that like I understand that this is a stupid thing, but this is the hill I'm dying on.
Right.
But when the hill you're dying on is complaining about Picard not hitting the record button for the Spock hologram so that Burnham can, like, if you're making an argument that this should not be in the episode because no one recorded it on the video camera, you've lost the point. Like in that early episode, they create a holographic Spock to say a whole bunch of lines that the Romulan propaganda machine wants them to do. Like it's Star Trek. It's not difficult to believe that at some point in Picard's life, either as a downloaded memory engram from when he went to the Golem, or even if like the comm badge, if the comm badge had like an audio visual recorder, or he created a holodeck simulation of Spock in commemoration of Spock's death. Like so many. It's
where
emotional.
Where was Spock at the time when he actually did that speech?
That happens in Unification 2. It happens in the beginning when Spock and Picard are arguing with each other as like Spock shows up, and this is after you have found him, Picard. So this is like right after that, and this is before he convinces Picard that he has to stay on Romulus.
Yeah. So, like you say, again, there's no mention of it being. It mentions Picard's logs, but there's no mention of it actually being taken there and then. Who's to say this is not a holographic representation or whatever? Yeah.
Back in the old days, Stan Lee did not award no prizes for people that found errors in the books. You only got a no prize if you found a solution to the error that you could explain it, right? Why it wasn't an error. Like, come on, people, collect your no prizes and go home. Let's all have fun.
They actually specifically say Admiral Jean-Luc Picard. So it was taken at a later date when he entered the log entry or when he created the file.
Now, but I have a question. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I watched all this. I was delighted to see the Picard tie-in. I said last week, like, I would love to see something that shows. We know that Discovery and Picard are in the same universe, but I would love to see something that explicitly called that out. And lo and behold, there it is. And as a screenwriter, the fact that you have a character who cannot tell a lie and has a sort of supernatural power to know when other people are lying and make them tell the truth too. Like, that's basically the side effect of the absolute candor vow. It was weird that she is not a Romulan, but a member of the Order. But it's also been like 1,000 years, so whatever.
But again, that does remove all of that stuff away from it. The idea that Romulans are maybe slightly psionic, and they've got training and they've got this and the other. Yeah. She was a scientist before that. At least with the kid in Picard, he's been trained since a very, very young child to use that sword. Yeah. Who's to say she can even swing that thing? I mean, you don't know. It's just like why?
Look, she multi-classed co-op.
Yes.
And now she's got all these new class features. We just haven't seen them yet. But honestly, I missed episodes of Discovery's second season, and so the whole mother plot line is actually kind of lost on me. But my question is, they never confirmed or spoke about the events of the destruction of Romulus.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Death, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was going to exactly say that. There's no mention. I know Burnham says I never looked into his death because I didn't know what happened, and this is obviously the first time she's ever done so. She sees this from Unification, but there's no mention of anything to do with the Kelvinverse Romulus stuff with Spock going into the Kelvinverse, which is obviously something to do with Romulus, or even stuff in Picard, which is fundamentally to do with Romulans, where they've actually started
because Picard mentions that Romulus got destroyed, right? Like, they clarify that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But they mention it at all. And you thought the idea, even if you're going to name check Picard in using the same order of things, the idea you've started name checking because Picard hung up his coats because he couldn't evacuate the Romulans.
Right.
The idea that isn't mentioned would be something kind of, okay, well, the Vulcans stepped in where Federation failed. That's why we're here, kind of thing. That would be something. Another reason for them not to get along with the Federation.
Jim, did you miss a Kelvinverse tie-in?
I didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah.
So the conversation we're having, I'm smiling here because I'm kind of reminding of so Next Generation did this episode of Sarek when they brought Sarek onto the episode, and then there was a giant writers' room debate that lasted like a day, whether or not they name dropped Spock. Because there was a line about Picard attending the wedding of Sarek's son.
Yes.
And then the conversation for a whole day was, do we say Spock? Do we say the name?
Because they didn't want to confirm that Spock got married?
Well, there's that, but they also didn't want to necessarily beholden Next Generation entirely to the TOS. Like, this is still season 3. They're still trying to determine what they are as a show.
Okay.
Like, they haven't really quite hit their stride yet. It's mid-season 3.
Yeah.
So it's close. But this is like a whole day of writing room debate as like people screaming at each other going, we should totally say everyone knows Sarek's son is Spock.
Yeah.
Like everyone who's presumably everyone who's subscribed to CBS All Access has seen the Kelvin movies.
Yes.
Or is tangentially aware of them, has at least seen an episode or two of Picard and has seen the destruction. It kind of gets to the point of, do we need to have a reference to the explosion of Romulus as to the instigation of them reunifying, or does that take away from Spock's message? Does that lessen the impact of unifying the two houses of Burnham?
I have a theory too, and I think it is also a writer's room thing. I'm sure this got talked about. Seeing Spock and seeing that flashback scene and his work on unification, Romulan Vulcan unification, is an emotional hit. Finding out that he died trying to save Romulus from being destroyed is a whole different emotional hit. And Burnham would have to react not only to seeing her younger brother in his moment of glory, because unifying these two people is really kind of Spock's life's work, but then also have to react to him dying, or maybe not dead. Like
I think you're right. Yeah, I think the idea that if they put a plot in there to say, or a line in to say, oh well, then Spock just disappeared. We don't know where he went. It'd be like, right, I'm off to go and find Spock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She would be like, well, they never found the body. I know he's not dead. And because Burnham is always right, she would know he didn't die.
Yeah.
Right? She wouldn't be like, oh, wow, my brother died. No, she'd be like, there's something about that that's not right.
I will say, to the credit of Kurtzman and company, they have handled the passing of Leonard Nimoy deftly.
Yeah.
In terms of not acknowledging, but not cashing in on.
Yeah.
Like the fact that was a plot point in Beyond that was quietly done to motivate then, Zachary Quinto Spock.
Yeah.
And then over here, if they had name dropped, then he becomes a model for the cause. We've already sat through that emotional gut check of Leonard Nimoy Spock dying.
Right.
Once as an audience. We don't necessarily need it again for this episode.
Yeah. So what's the deal with Navarre?
What, as a name?
All right. So Navarre comes from Spockomania. Spockomania is a very full Star Trek fan magazine.
What's it called? Spockomania. Okay, I love it already. Sight unseen.
So it was it was created in, I think, seasons 1 of Star Trek. Spock comes out, becomes a sex icon, and women just start writing fan fiction. This is where slash fiction comes in. This is where and Navarre was used to describe two representations in the single picture, two forms in one picture.
Oh, you mean like the Holy Grail faces talking thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Or that Michelangelo painting that has the brain that Westworld did, right?
Okay.
So there's the religious component of it, but then there's the mental, the brain creates God because it's God's inside of his space, his head space. It was used for Spock specifically in a short story that came out a few years later. Because they did Spock gets split up into two halves. Instead of evil Spock and good Spock, it's human Spock and Spock. So the whole concept of Navarre is this fan world, because unlike Klingon, Vulcan's never been developed as a language. It's spoken a smattering of times through the 50+ years of Star Trek history, but no one sat down and created rules for it, like we have for Elvish, or like we have for the Klingon vocabulary. Some of these words just sort of created by fans, and now that's being adopted by canon.
Wasn't it Scotty that came up with the vocabulary for Vulcan?
Yeah, he came up with a couple phrases in the motion picture.
Okay.
And that's never been extrapolated beyond those couple lines in the motion picture.
I see.
So it's one of those issues where, people give Discovery crap for it not being adherent to old Star Trek.
Yeah.
But they had Navarre as a reference. They had Freshel used as a restroom, which comes straight from the books.
Yeah.
That's not from Star Trek canon anywhere. That's never been on the blueprint. That comes straight from, My Enemy, My Ally. That's a Star Trek Romulan novel.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we had Christian Bale writing this episode, who herself is a Trek novelist, she wrote all those Voyager novels post the Endgame.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's written like 10 books.
Oh, wow.
And it's all like the same continuity. Like it's the ongoing adventures of the Starship Voyager and her crew.
Nice.
The fact that she's also a show creator of Star Trek Picard.
Oh.
And she's been part of Discovery since, either day 1 or day 2.
Yeah.
I think this episode lends itself to a conversation piece where it's talking to all facets of Star Trek and not just talking at Star Trek.
Well, I thought it was pretty well written, but I agree with Aid's observation that it's really, and Jim, you as well, that it's the character work that makes this show good, right? Like when the characters are kind of interacting with each other, and we get to see cool character stuff. That's when this show is kind of firing on all cylinders.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we've talked good thing. A couple of things that I do have of issue with this with this episode. Right. So again, this is all the technical crappy stuff in the background stuff rather than actually the episode. Because again, like I said before, the episode itself kind of does what it's supposed to do. We start A, we start to B. You kind of know they're going to get there. There's going to be a little faffing around in the middle. So first things first. 3 pinpoints of data for the 3 black boxes.
Yes.
Yep. They've got all the sensors in subspace that they can pinpoint the various milliseconds it takes to go to each of the black boxes to actually determine where generally in space this is, at least in a 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional point of thing, yeah? For 90% of subspace was destroyed by the Gorn. So is it just the 10% again that's useful to us at this point in time that still remains? Because again, it's the second time they've used subspace as a thing, but that 90% of it being destroyed has not been mentioned at all. Well, thank God, we're lucky to, it's just that I don't know what's going on with that again. That kind of knocked me off.
Yeah.
The second thing being is the actual idea, as we mentioned last time, that Starfleet apparently didn't know that Discovery had a spore drive. They kept it a secret, and oh my God, they got a spore drive, even though they did it in their parking lot. They go outside, they bip over to Vulcan. Oh, okay, you've got this new spore drive we've been talking about. Right, so right, okay. And then they go, oh, and also you're time travelers then as well, are you? Oh, yeah, we're time travelers. Oh, we had to let you know that. Right, so again, another reason to be pissed off at Starfleet, because apparently Starfleet put the Temple Accords where time travel's not allowed, but we've also got a ship full of time travelers we've just sent over to your planet. Again, it's just all this kind of weird stuff that they've put in there as kind of blocks to certain stories, but then they just sweep it aside when it gets inconvenient.
I did notice that in order for the story to work, especially for Burnham's mother and the Vulcan president to have the lines they have to have very quickly learned a whole lot about Discovery and Burnham's life. Like, there's a lot of quick, oh yes, we read the report kind of hand waving going on there. But, for narrative, I was prepared to accept it. Yeah, it's just, again, I wouldn't mind if they were actually a member of the Federation. I wouldn't mind so much, because the idea of exchange of data between those two. But the idea that there's kind of like this, Cold War thing going on between them at the moment, where they're kind of like, well, we're not going to deal with them, or they hate each other. Oh, by the way, here's a load of information about our secret special ship that can beam across the galaxy at a blink of an eye. Oh, okay, fine. It's just, even the idea that wouldn't give the Vulcans some reason to say, well, they've trusted this with this information, maybe we can trust it with some of ours. That would at least be something. I noticed they did at least fly Discovery out of the parking lot before they did go outside the actual the shield this time. Yeah, they heard you from last week's episode. I'm still convinced there's going to be a time travel solution or a thing in this, because once again we get mention of the Temple Accords. They literally mention it every single episode for the last 3 or 4 episodes. They've been at least name dropping it somewhere like there. And I think the idea to remind your cast,
time travelers bad. I don't like that. I think there's got to be something in there. I think there's going to be something going on with it.
My money's still against you, but we'll see. Jim, anything that we've missed on this episode that you'd like to bring up?
Like Aid said, there was not much meat on the bone in terms of moving the plot forward. I do think it's a little silly that the solution to Burnham's, like the reason she gets the evidence is she finds out, like she essentially does Stranger Things where they triangulate 3 points to find the signal. And I think that's a little too easy, especially once you add into the fact that you have a third dimension that, the kids at Stranger Things isn't, they're not really necessarily dealing with. I enjoyed this episode. I think it was Discovery at its best when it's focused on the characters and self-discovery. And I enjoyed, like, I know Aid's kind of like, why does it have to be the mom? But the fact that the mom is there and we're now unifying the various disparate aspects of Burnham's life by having her being a part of this Vulcanian society of Romulan warrior nuns.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Like it's for me, it's a little pat, but when they started name checking, like this person took a special interest in you, I'm like, okay, are you gonna give us like Spock's grandson? Because that's fucking weird.
That's what I thought we were gonna get.
Yeah. Like, are you going to give me his granddaughter? Because they had already mentioned it was a Kuat Malat person. I'm like, that's going to be weird. Like, I don't necessarily know if I want that in my life.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to give me a Savick cameo.
Yeah, I thought it would be. I thought, are they going to do that? But then I thought to myself, no, they couldn't possibly do that. And then
thankfully, I think they did the right thing, and they made it more about Burnham because. The Spock thing happens. The Jean-Luc Picard's name dropped right before Spock's image shows up. Like that's a 2-punch. But I wasn't crying at that moment. And then there was the conversation a little bit later that was kind of emotionally geared towards Spock, and I was like, I'm still not in control. But for me, what I got emotionally invested and I shed my tear was the quiet scene between Burnham and her mom. And they're just talking, and they're just like, they're not like the plot's already resolved. She's handed the MacGuffin to Burnham. Like Aid, you did point out, it does wind up being breaking in Burnham's way, but I guess that's Discovery.
Yeah.
But then she has this emotional heart-to-heart with her mother that she hasn't been able to have since she was 7. And that's when I was like, oh, like when she's like, you know where to find me. I'm like, oh. Like that's the one thing she hasn't been able to have is having this anchor to her past.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have to point out that we never actually visit Vulcan. We never leave the ship.
Oh, the whole
thing, people.
You're right.
You don't get to see Vulcan, and I was a little miffed about that because I'm like, I want to see Vulcan, like I don't want to just see the planet. I want to see a location. Give me something new on Vulcan or Naval.
You know what Discovery needs? They need the volume. So those of you that have watched The Mandalorian behind the scenes show know that they have this like sound set called the volume where they can project digital images on the outside of the walls that are so accurate that you can film it. And so the entire show, all those outdoor scenes, like literally everything you see is filmed in a room that's like 50 feet around. They need that because they could solve all of Aid's problems with that. Like
they had bought that. That is happening for season 4. They just bought it because The Mandalorian came out, and they're like, how do we compete with that? Like, that's Star Wars on a weekly budget. Like, how do we do that? And they're like, oh, it's this new technology.
It's so interesting that we get. I know I harp on this every week, but with Mando and Enterprise and Discovery both on the same week, that they're both doing nostalgic fan service the same week. The same week that we get Spock is the same week we get Ahsoka Tano, right? And it's so interesting. I don't know.
Well,
I say-
or the name drop of Thrawn, which for me, like,
Yeah.
out of the brain.
Abe?
But say I think I would have liked to have seen, again, like Jim said, the idea seeing something of Vulcan would have been nice.
Yeah.
First of all, straight away. The idea as well that, so this reminded me a lot of the episode where Picard has to defend Worf.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of courtroomness. Again, we've seen it all
Yeah.
before, but
Yeah.
but the fundamental thing different that Discovery obviously has is that everyone in Discovery theoretically knows about Vulcan being a member of the Federation because it was there. I would have really loved some character stuff where they're sitting around the table. Well, what's happened to Vulcan? What's changed since we were here last? What did just some interest for the other crew members of actually the actual planet and what had happened? Because the idea, there's Romulans there as well? What the hell's going on? That would have been really, really nice to actually see something that they've actually taken an interest in the outside world. Because at the moment, the idea that the only thing they're talking about is Tilly being promoted kind of just makes it. And again, even the people, like you said before, those kind of effectively no-name characters we see sitting in the actual courtroom itself. Yeah. If they were characters we've seen before, the idea they come out and go, "Oh my God, Vulcan's changed its own sword." Yeah, that would have been really nice. The episodes, we've got 45-minute episodes, hour episodes, whatever. It did seem to go pretty quick this time. It didn't seem to drag. But just some stuff would be nice to just do something with the other characters. I really just want to see it rounded out a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that Jim's observation of the Crown is an interesting counterpoint because we would have those scenes, right, where the characters are just like interacting with each other and like trying to grapple with their situation in this new universe. And we really haven't seen any of that. We got like a 3-week montage when it was like, okay, whiz bang, the ship is refit, everybody gets new gadgets.
Okay, awesome.
And it's like, oh wow, that's cool, and that's it. Like we haven't really.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, because Jim, you probably get this before I would. Right, unless someone's like, right, Discovery is set before classic series, okay?
Yeah.
Classic series first appearance of Romulans. Oh my God, they look like Vulcans. We didn't know they looked like Vulcans because no one's seen them. Nobody fucking mentions that in Discovery.
Yeah.
And you go, they look like Vulcan. They're cousins. Is that exactly? That's what it. Just the characters taking an interest. 1 line, for God's sake, would have been so nice.
I want to see characters like looking up their family members in the
and that's the other thing. The idea that she didn't find out what happened to Sarek or her mother, or that would have been nice as well.
She gave a line about that. Like she said, like I chose not to look them up. Okay, but I would love to see other members of the cast. Like I don't think they all agreed with Burnham, right? There's got to be somebody who's
Tilly did. Tilly looked up her mom. That was the first thing Tilly did. Like when they interacted with Starfleet or they interacted with Ulf, the very first thing she probably did was look up her mom.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have seen some of those character bits. I mean, I guess that's what fan fiction is for, and I guess that's what novels are for. But still, all of this would require time, and that would mean either the episodes are longer, there's more of them, there's fewer things happening in every episode, or God forbid, Burnham gets less screen time.
But what? So again, going to that fundamental episode, the episode with with Worf being represented by Picard, yeah. I guarantee there was a B plot in that episode that actually had time to breathe and was resolved by the end of the episode. It wasn't all Picard and Worf. There must have been.
Remember what it is. Jim is going to.
I don't think there is an actual B plot to that episode.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's Sins of the Father. That's the episode you're talking about. That's when we are introduced to the Kinamore attack and all that. And that may actually just be a single plot episode.
Right. Okay.
I'm not willing to die on this hill, but it may be.
What's our clips of next week? Have we seen anything? We had a trailer, a teaser. Aid, you don't get to see them, do you?
I don't know. The only way I get to see is if they put them on YouTube, and I get to see them on YouTube. So I don't see anything at all. We still haven't seen the second half of the short trip stuff from season 2. That's not been put on there yet. So I don't know what's happening with that. But
we will be back next week with our next episode, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you then.